In Chicago, 23 people were shot, one of them fatally during a Juneteenth event yesterday. In Kellogg, Idaho, 4 people were shot and killed. A suspect was arrested. And in San Francisco, 6 people were injured in a shootout involving 2 cars. 2 were hit by stray bullets and 2 young girls were hit by the cars. With little agreement in Washington over how to stop the violence, tonight Richard Engel reports on how lawmakers in Serbia responded following 2 mass shootings there.
Serbians didn't see it coming. On May 3rd, a 13-year-old boy stormed into a school with his father's 2 guns and a hit list and killed 8 classmates. The next day, a man with a history of violence opened fire in a village, killing 8 more. But then came more than thoughts and prayers. Tens of thousands demanded not just tighter gun controls, but a reorientation of society away from violence.
I think a lot of us have just had enough.
Zarko Svechik's 9-year-old daughter Zora was in the school when the 13-year-old boy went on a killing spree. What would you say to Americans who've been through this and then see no change?
I would say to them, safeguard your democracy, if you still have it, and mobilize.
Within weeks of the shootings here, new laws were introduced and old ones enforced. Now, all sales of new guns are banned for 2 years. Gun owners must submit to in-person psychological and background checks. And owning an illegal gun is punishable by up to 15 years in prison. Many Serbians are turning in their guns voluntarily.
Here's lots of AKs and assault rifles.
There are 70,000 guns in this police warehouse, surrendered under a no-questions-asked amnesty. The Deputy Interior Minister says this is only the start.
What do you think when you see all of this?
I see life saved, he said. Serbia is deeply divided politically, but overhauling gun laws was universally popular. Dobrica Veselinovic is an opposition politician.
Why is it, do you think, you were able to cross political divides?
We are not having these big gun lobbies and the big industry which is behind it.
The father we spoke to, and many others, now want to push further, dialing back violence in the media and in political discourse. Lester?
All right, Richard, thank you. In 60 seconds, tracking who gets an abortion. One state trying to make sure personal data isn't used to follow women who are driving there for the procedure. Plus, the new housing boom in rentals.
All right. You see what that country done real quick pertaining to gun violence.
Don't use it if you're...
I don't think that the people didn't respond real quick. If you get caught with an illegal gun, you're looking at 15 years, which is pretty stiff. If America doesn't do the same thing and do it in orderly fashion, and I know this isn't going to be a popular thing, especially right here in Northwest Tennessee where I live, but in order to save lives, that's the action that's going to have to be presented in order to eliminate the gun violence. Now, just because you eliminate the gun violence doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to eliminate all the other type of violence pertaining to stabbing people or using a blunt object towards killing them or pushing them off a building or pushing them in front of a train or whatever. Evil right now has been leashed upon to society such as I have never ever begun to believe. And I thought that it was bad enough, in which it was, whenever I first moved back here, just over some dogs and over disrespect from neighbors. I thought it was bad because there was various people that was coming out of the community other than the initial family that was associated with the commotion. Even from time to time, some of them will drive by here, and rather than be respectful, they'll rev up their motor, or they'll try to spin out, or they'll do something purposely just to show their anger and rage. But the thing about it is, they don't just do it here, they do it everywhere. In other words, they got these type of pipes on their vehicles to where whenever they rev them up, They make a obsessively amount of noise, and they do that just to irritate basically the general population. And to think that that is going on openly and publicly today in comparison to what things used to be calm and gentle and polite, especially whenever I was growing up. If you even had a loud stereo too loud, the police was liable to pull you over and give you a ticket for excessive noise, much less having loud pipes or deliberately making excessive loud noises. I've never seen the world like it is right now towards it being in turmoil, that once more verifies the fact of Satan coming down in great wrath, because it knoweth its time is short. And because of it, it is squirming, it is back crawling, it is conniving, it is biting, it is clawing, it is coming down in the sense of not only human to human, but the forces of nature against the humans. I mean, I've never seen these spirituality influences or entities that have become this real, that instead of them lightening up, they're actually getting worse. And if we don't have politicians that can recognize that, and if we don't have politicians with enough backbone that will do something about that, then my friends, the only thing I can tell you is that America is in big, big trouble. Big trouble. Once more, you got to have a backbone to maintain law and order. And if you don't, then deformed order will eventually take over the good people. Matter of fact, I just had somebody the other night, I'm not going to mention their names, but they said something about violence and hostility, and the first thing that they said, and these was 3 elderly women, a little bit older than me, that said, well, it looks like we're going to have to go back to the hangings, public hangings, in making statements, open statements to the meanness of the uprising, if we're going to clamp down on this type of intolerableness. And whenever they said that, I hesitated for a second, but I never replied. I never said anything other than sure, you're right. But the bottom line is this: it has gone so far in parenting obstruction. I'm going to use that word, parenting obstruction, because of children obstructing against their parents, especially if they're godly parents. It has gone so far, I don't know that even that technique would work as of right now, because a lot of them are actually provoking society in deliberately attacking them, hoping that they will wind up taking them out. In other words, basically a suicidal situation, to where you got kids that they don't want to struggle for the survival of the survival of society. They no longer want to struggle. They can see, they're not blind in how that the adults, the baby boomers, the older American politicians has basically sold us downstream. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, pertaining to how Walmart has grown just within the past 30 years since Sam Walton died. You know, whenever you bring in all these illegals, those are people that's going to steal the labor job industry away too as well. It's almost as if that our country is actually changing right in front of our very eyes. And a lot of these employers that has their management team, supervisors, they actually have to speak now 2 different languages. They have to speak American and Spanish if they're going to maintain any type of sense of order within the rim of their business. That way they can communicate. Because if you can't communicate with the people that you got hired, how are you going to tell them that they're doing a bad job, or how are you going to tell them that they're doing an excellent job if they can't understand you and you can't understand them? So America is basically in the process of evolving, and I basically realized this. I guess it was long about Bill Clinton's era in the early 90s, whenever they started changing over to the automatic program services. Whenever you dial the operator, or you would call various companies, and it'd say 1 for American, 2 for Spanish. We knew that whenever that was happening, that was basically the transitioning period of basically changing us over to where we are today. Like I said, whenever you let in over 1 million refugees over here to America, people that are basically running for their lives, trying to better their own lives, in which you can't blame people for wanting to better their own lives. But whenever you have all these illegal immigrants coming over here, all they're going to do is take the jobs away from the American people, and the American people has sat back and let this occur. So by doing what them 3 women that I was talking to about 2 days ago, towards hanging people over hanging offenses pertaining to capital punishment, I don't know that would dampen the trend that's going on right now pertaining to all the mass shootings and the killings. It's as if life in and of itself has become very, very invaluable, to the point that now nobody's life is valuable. Nobody's life is valuable. You're a statistic, and you can be replaced by another number, by another person. Because I guess what their opinion of it is, well, we got entirely too many people in the world anyway. There's over 7, soon to be 8 billion people on the planet, and because there's so many people on the planet, we can afford to lose you, or lose you, or lose you, or lose this whole group of people over here. And the thing about it is, the children that are being victimized by this same type of atmosphere, those may have very well been the children that could have turned this around. So by going on this tangent towards public hangings and public displays like that, I really don't know at this point in time that's the answer to the problem. The answer to the problem is by people going back to God. The answer to the problem is a worldwide revival that will elevate into a revolution. But if you can't get people that will join together in those type of activities, well, then you're at a stalemate. And, all we can do at this point in time is just pray to God that some of those bullets won't come flying over my head, regardless whether I'm in the Walmart parking lot, or I'm in the mall, or I'm at the river, or I'm at this place or that place, because it's got to the point, and I don't want to say this to try to scare people. That's not my intent toward me putting out this information. But it's got to the point that it is so dangerous to go to a live venue. It don't matter if it's a country western concert. It don't matter if it's a rock and roll concert. It don't matter if it's a ball game. It don't matter if it's a tractor pull. It don't matter if it's a rodeo. It don't matter if it's some sort of water entertainment next to the lake where you see a bunch of boats racing or skiing or whatever. It's got to the point of getting around a large crowd of people. You are literally risking your life and limb, the same way if you was in the military and your captain ordered you to go on the front line. And I know that sounds a bit bizarre, but in some of these places, it's actually that bad. It's like, I've been saying now for the past 3 or 4 years that Chicago is like a baby Baghdad. So if those things are going on here in America the way that they are, could you only imagine how bad it really is in Baghdad or in Afghanistan or Pakistan or some of those other countries that have been walloped just within the past 3 or 4 years, especially since COVID has hit? We are dealing with a whole new set of entities that have come out of the very pits of hell, as far as I'm concerned, just like fentanyl coming out of the pits of hell, to the point that one package, a regular sugar package that you put in most people's coffee that drink coffee or tea or whatever, one package of that, if it was filled full of fentanyl instead of sugar, has the equivalency of killing over 500 people. Whenever you have stuff like that floating around in the streets, whenever you have all these guns and all this violence, whenever your little daughter at the age of 7, 8, 9 years old cannot play no longer on the street corner because some idiot's liable to drive by and grab her up, and the next thing you know, use her as a sex object until whenever he gets tired of her and then kills her. Whenever you're living in a dangerous society like this, my friends, you don't have to be a very smart, intelligent person to understand that obviously our laws of order has failed us. I continue to keep saying this. The Union has in fact failed us. I don't know. I truly do believe that stiffening the crimes that deserve to be stiffened need to be stiffened, regardless whether it's a knife or a gun, any type of violent act upon to another individual, especially if it was not called for. I truly believe that those types of activities does need to be stiffened with either more jail time or whatever. But I'm telling you right now, if America does not wake up in regards towards all the violence, we are going to be plummeted off into great tribulation, such as you could not nor would not ever begin to fathom. And I realize that things are bad right now. But don't think for a second that they can't become even worse. And if you don't believe me, listen to this next show, this next setting here, new setting, pertaining to women that are now having to divert because of a mistake that was made, and they know that the child is basically unwanted, regardless whether it was a boyfriend or just a one-night stand or somebody got raped. But listen to what they're fixing to say right now about intelligence that has basically come on board. It got thrown into our laps, especially on the elderly people, the older people. It got thrown into our laps to the point that we either modify towards learning how to activate our phones and do certain things on our phones. In other words, become a phone technician. We either going to have to relearn ourselves towards doing all these things, and I'm pretty sure it's going to work that way with buying groceries and buying gas and etc., that everything is going to become digital, electronical. And whenever this happens, a lot of these elderly people that is not schooling themselves in this order are going to be left behind. One of the things that I did notice whenever I was out down in Florida, I think it was either the second or the third time. Of course, I've been in Florida in and out probably a dozen times. I think it was the second time. It was after the event happened to me up in Kentucky, so it had to have been in 20 and 13. I did notice that a lot of the I don't know if it was being done locally by the counties or by the state or by independent agencies that handle artificial intelligence, but I did notice that they was formulating classes for the elderly people to go to so that they could be taught in how to operate these phones and how to become more advanced in electronics. I did see that. But now you keep in mind, Florida is basically a retirement state, and I'm going to say probably over half of Florida. Now I'm just guessing, I don't know this to be a fact, but I'm just saying it's somewhere around half of Florida that's basically people that's already retired or people that are in their late 50s, early 60s and beyond, because Florida is a retirement state. Once more, the young people, they caught on to it. It was taught to them in school. The only thing that was taught to me in school was computers are going to take over. Computers are going to take over. And at the time, whenever that was mentioned, computers was so far out in left field that basically the whole class laughed at it, at the teachers, by saying, yeah, sure, that, yeah, I bet. But you know what? Computers are actually running the world now. And if they're not running the world in one form, they're running the world in another form. But basically, America was on pause. They had it on automatic pilot, depending upon our politicians to steer us in the right direction. And now, all of a sudden, all this stuff has been dumped into our laps to the degree of listening to what this individual is going to say here about this particular program.
It's no secret there is surveillance almost everywhere we go these days. Now, one state is taking action to prevent the tracking of women who may be driving to get an abortion. Ann Thompson explains.
If it feels like you are being tracked, it may be because you are. At red lights, going in and out of the office, on your smartphone. But what if you could be tracked seeking a legal abortion simply by your license plate?
I don't think people realize how much of their personal data is collected, that their whereabouts are tracked.
That's why Illinois Secretary of State Alexi Janulius backs what he says is a first-in-the-nation bill to outlaw sharing or selling license plate data for women seeking abortions. Who has access to license plate trackers?
A number of private and public entities have this personal, sensitive data.
Data he fears could be weaponized as some states try to criminalize helping someone get an abortion, even in a state where it is legal. 3 other states have passed laws aimed at protecting health data from such efforts.
When they travel, whether it's to an abortion clinic or the grocery store, we need to make sure this data is protected.
Illinois Right to Life Executive Director Mary Kate Zander opposes abortion. Do you think
it's not going to be controlled? The beast, the genie has been let out of the bottle. The toothpaste is out of the tube. And if we think that we're going to put it back into the tube, in today's society, with everything running the way that it is towards high speed, I'm talking about high-speed trucks, high-speed cars, high-speed businesses, high-speed boats, high-speed planes, high-speed everything. If we think that we're going to be able to put the genie back into the bottle, we're only fooling ourselves.
Do you think this bill is necessary?
I think it's unnecessary. They're trying to create a narrative around what the pro-life movement may or may not be doing.
She says her organization is not trying to criminalize women seeking the procedure. Is the Right to Life movement tracking license plates of women?
No, absolutely not.
Has it done that in the past?
No,
Do you
absolutely
see it
not.
doing that in the future?
Absolutely not. That's just not a tactic that we would use.
With a quarter of their patients now from...
Or that's what they're telling us. This is not a tactic that we would use. But what if society over here in America becomes so outlandishly dangerous that that was basically the only way that they could control people's lives, by using this data? Is that the next level of security or insecurity that we're going to be walking off into? Because like I said, if our politicians that obviously are not smart enough to identify the dangers in this, to the degree that it's been dumped off into the elderly society's laps, to the point that now they had to become geniuses overnight. And of course, if you're a slow learner, which I've always been a slow learner whenever it comes to the English language, because the English language to me was harder to figure out than a jigsaw puzzle. And even to this day, my spelling is still just as bad, or almost as bad, as what it was whenever I was growing up in high school. But there's so many people that is having to readapt, like I said, become phone technicians in understanding this technology. And the thing about it is, even the people that designed it are giving out red flags right now by telling everybody that, hey, this thing has gotten a mind of its own to the degree that it basically is taking on its own personality. And you may think I'm crazy by me saying this, but I truly believe that that is part of the biblical Bible prophecy whenever it talks about those that did not worship the beast, or those that did not accept or take the beast mark of the beast number, that they will be basically pushed out of society to the degree that they will either slowly dwindle away towards starvation or whatever, or it'll get so bad over here that if you don't accept the mark, you'll basically be killed because you didn't accept the mark of the beast. What is the beast? The beast is this entity that has now been leashed out into society that is now controlling people's lives. There is no privacy. There is no privacy, and yes, they will monitor. Google will monitor you and whatever that you're interested in. It doesn't matter if it's cats, dogs, horses, guns, sports, women, airplanes, football, whatever. It knows this, and because it knows this, it will be sending advertising commercials your way coming near a neighborhood near you, just like the Walmart slogan. So don't think that this is some sort of a science fiction manipulation trick that people are talking about and that it can't happen, or the fact that it's already happened. Especially if a red flag has already been waved in and on your life to the point of concern. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's legal. Even under the Patriot Act, I still don't think it's legal. But basically, Big Brother can pull whatever laws that he wants to pull off of the shelf and use them against their own people. Now, naturally, people like President Biden and your state Congress and your senators and etc., they're going to tell you, oh, no, we don't do this. Just like the woman just got through saying, oh, no, we don't do this. Really? Really? You don't do it? You know, like I was telling you the other day, the talk about inserting chips into people's hands and inserting chips into people's bodies actually began in the 90s of this ideal. And in this ideal, there was big concern about people's health in regards towards insurance companies either covering you or not covering you. And whenever I say not covering you, they basically raise your insurance premium up 3 times higher than what it would have been if you didn't have bad health. And it's a way for the insurance companies to make up for the differences in insuring people with the bad health. But how do they find out that people's got bad health? They find out through social media, through digital services. That's how they find out your health. So there was talk about this in the 90s, and because people was so superstitious over here, and these big players knew this, they knew that they was going to have to bring the chip on board through the back door rather than coming through the front door, and they basically connived people or manipulated people in taking all these phones now that people wear around their necks and put in their pockets and their purses, and they go everywhere they go in their automobiles, that now, instead of you accepting the chip that they was going to give you today, you pay for the chip because the phone has a chip in it, and everywhere you go, usually the phone goes with you. So don't tell me that this isn't part of the plan, the master plan towards the mark of the beast, that this is all part of the beast that's rising up. It talks about rising up out of the sea or rising up out of the ocean in the Bible. Well, the ocean or the sea, it doesn't mean that literally. It's talking about rising up from something deep, deep from within. And basically all this artificial intelligence has risen up from within just within the past 20, 25, 30 years. And now it's knocking on our doorsteps. And if you say that you haven't taken the chip, you're only lying to yourself, because you have taken the chip. You just didn't take it intravenously. You've taken the chip, which is the beginning phases, I believe, a prelude into this entity that's going to take society over, that's basically going to become part of the beast that the Bible talks about, that he that did not take the mark, or he that did not worship the beast, will basically be called out of the herd, to the degree that they will no longer be able to function in society. And we're seeing that right now. I mean, we've seen elements of that during COVID towards wearing a mask, that if you didn't have papers on you verifying that you had been given the vaccination shot, that you couldn't get on airlines, and you couldn't do this, you couldn't go in various restaurants. We see that already happening to us right in front of our very eyes. And the thing about it is, this genie now that's been leashed out of the bottle can't be put back in.
Out of state, Illinois Planned Parenthood CEO Jennifer Welch is not convinced.
Patients need to know that when they come for health care, that information won't be shared with anybody, law enforcement, activists, anybody else.
Data collection and privacy, a new frontier in the nation's fight over abortion rights. Ann Thompson, NBC News, Chicago.
Still to come here tonight, the rush to rent, why more people are saying yes to signing a lease, and how it's shaking the foundation of housing in America.
But it's going to get to where that if we are not in gated communities, regardless whether it be literally, emotionally, regardless whether it be socially, economically, that if we are not in gated communities, the boogeyman's going to come out of the corner and it's going to take advantage of us. So this Trojan horse, I use the Trojan horse as an example, that everybody thought was all gleaming and glimmering, kind of like gold. Eventually, people's going to find out the dangers involving in this type of artificial intelligence. And it kind of makes you wonder if some of the scientific movies that come out 25, 30 years ago, let's say the movie Terminator, where the machine was basically taking over and trying to kill this young boy that the mother was going to have a pregnancy of, that was going to basically help to save the planet, that this machine was trying to kill this individual while this other machine from the future was trying to save this individual. It has reached a point that it is a strong possibility that we will see stuff like that actually occurring before the end of time. Because as the planet heats up, as the lakes and the waters evaporate, as problems continue to escalate pertaining to the agriculture communities, regardless whether it's too much rain, not enough rain, or etc., we're going to see things become more dire on a day-to-day, everyday level based around supply and demand. And, of course, if you're somebody like me on a fixed income, you basically got to take it on the cheek, and whatever your government offers you, that's what you got to take. So what is going to happen with all the gun violence? I mean, it continues to keep haunting the American people again and again and again. How come other countries can stiffen their laws and come down on the gun violence to where ours cannot? So where are we going? Where's the end game pertaining to all this gun violence here in America? And you say, well, it's gun violence, it's gun violence, it's gun violence. No, it's not just gun violence. You know, you can use your automobile as a weapon, and you can run into a group of people and kill 7 or 8, 10, 15, 20 people. People are mean-spirited. They're mean. They want to hurt people. You don't have to do nothing to them for these people to lash out this way. You can park too close to them, and your door barely touched their vehicle, and the next thing you know, you wind up in the middle of a confrontation. Or you're driving down the road, and they think that you cut them off, and in reality, you didn't even know that they was nowhere around, and the next thing you know, it winds up in a alteration, a confrontation. You can be in school and say something, and somebody think that they heard something pertaining to their minds racing, their imagination running wild, and the next thing you know, you wind up in a confrontation. I'm telling you, we are running up against the powers of the devil right now, such as we have never, ever done before. And if we are not, as individuals, smart enough to identify towards what is happening to us in regrouping and coming together in trying to solve these major issues that are going to be so pathetically damaging in so many people's lives in so many different ways, if we're not smart enough to look through all this stuff, I promise you it's only going to get even worse, regardless whether we're talking about privacy rights or we're talking about people being able to buy drugs online, knowing good and well that what they're getting is lethal, pertaining to a substance that will kill individuals left and right. I mean, I've never seen the world become basically the wild, wild west overnight. And that's what's happened since COVID. Whenever COVID hit, people had to settle down. People had to conform. People had to mind their manners and readjust, and they had to become civilized to the degree that they had to behave. Now, since COVID is on its way out, and now we realize how strenuous that these entities has caused. Now we're seeing another entity merging that has been merging for quite some times now, pertaining to artificial intelligence, that can basically track people just like that camera's doing right there, that they're already using openly in places like China and Russia and other countries, just in order to control their people, like controlling a bunch of livestock. In other words, I want my cows over here grazing in this field today, and tomorrow, if I choose, I'm going to move them all over here to this field versus keeping them in the same field. So we're going to manually move all these cows to this other field over here, because that's what we have chosen to do. Now, if you want to be run like this, if you want to be dominated like this, if you wanted to be dictated to like this, which is basically coming out of the rule book of tyranny, then continue to not say nothing, continue to not do nothing, and continue to let this technology succeed or exceed everybody's expectations to the point of technology can now order parts to repair itself. Technology can think above and beyond what the normal human being would think towards preparing for tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. I use the automobiles towards working in the automobile industry for about 35 years, and plus being around automobiles as much as what I've been around, working on them ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. I use automobiles of today's society, with them having so much computer hardware in them, that basically that automobile becomes you. It forms its own personality. It knows whenever you grab a hold of the handle that that's you. It knows whenever you sit in a seat and you crank the motor up and you hold on to the steering wheel that that's you. And that automobile has to become acquainted with you, and by it becoming acquainted with you, the automobile in and of itself renders its own personality. That's the reason why it's so difficult, and it wears out an automobile twice as much if it's in service, like a deputy's car, using it in a police patrol, because you got so many different people that's driving the same automobile. The automobile don't have time to get readjusted to one personality until all of a sudden there's somebody else driving the automobile. So the automobile is steadily having to wander around towards not knowing what personality it should obey or attend to, and because of it, it don't attend to none of them, and because of it, the automobile will wear out 3 times faster than what a one-owner car will wear out. We know this. This is not something just off the top of my head. This is facts. We have studied this in the car industry, looking at the procedures of what automobiles do, what they don't do, how they respond, how they don't respond, what an automobile is going to do if it's got 150 people driving it through the course of its life versus only one person driving the automobile during the course of its life. So don't tell me that the things that I'm talking about is absurd. They're not absurd. But whenever it gets to the point that this same personality is now in our homes, in our schools, in our church houses, in our courthouses, in our streets, in our convenience stores, in our retail stores, in our lives in general, that's whenever you have to worry about this entity getting into the wrong hands. And it may not even have to do that. It may create its own entity by making its own demands to society. And once more, I believe that this is part of the prophecy coming true that the Bible talks about in regards towards the beast. Them that does not worship the beast, or them that does not accept the terms of the beast, will basically be called out, set aside, and left to die a dignified death, basically. And I don't even know how dignified that it's going to get once things becomes this disorderly throughout the planet, with the crops failing and the floods and the droughts and the pandemics and the wars and everything else that's going to go on. I don't know how orderly that this will be, but it will be a form of order, and it will be demanded by the beast, according to the Bible. According to the Bible. Those that did not accept the terms of the beast will suffer the consequences of it. So don't say the things that I'm talking about is far-fetched. Don't say that the things that I'm talking about is not going to happen, because in actuality it already is in the process of happening. This is just a prelude to that next step. It's a prelude to that next step, towards actually being able to analyze, dissect a data tracking device battling against people's identity, and they was only using this particular subject matter of women, young girls having to have abortions, and how that this entity will have a mind of its own that will actually track these young girls in knowing who's helping them or where they're going to have these abortions taken of. Don't say that this is scientific and it can't happen. We're living in a day like I've never ever seen before, with all the violence, all the hostility, and all the data that is now dominating people's lives in such ways that if somebody would have explained this to me even as little as 5 to 7 to 10 years ago, that this was what we was going to be looking forward to, I would have probably looked at them and called them a barefaced lie. But today, it's no longer an ideal. It's no longer a thought. It's actually occurring right in front of our very eyes. Good luck to all of us as we go into this digital age that could very well be our own Achilles heel pertaining to the survival of humanity. Good luck to all of us in how far that this advanced technology that used to be us taking it, but I believe we're at the threshold towards now it taking us. In other words, we gave it a life source, we gave it a heartbeat, kind of like creating an Einstein, creating a monster, that now the monster has taken on its own personality, and instead of us controlling it, it could actually evolve to the point of it controlling us. That's what a lot of your programmers and a lot of your digital computerized sensitive people are now saying. They have raised a red flag to it just within the past 30 plus days in identifying that these sensitive subject matters could be weaponized towards destroying humanity. Like I said, 5 years ago, whenever I first was introduced to the smartphone, my brother and I bought the smartphone at the same time. I think it was in the year 2016. Up until then, I had a flip phone. You could do certain things on a flip phone, but not like a smartphone. Since then, I have had to study and look, and I still haven't got all of it figured out. I still got to go to my carrier and find out why my phone is acting this way or what my phone's doing this way. Because overnight, we all had to become basically phone technicians. Whenever they told us that computers was going to run the world, we laughed at them in the late 60s and the early 70s. Now, computers are running the world. Good luck to all of us. Good luck to each and every one of us, especially if we don't figure out how to harness this in a more adaptable, friendly way to be able to use it for the betterment of mankind versus weaponizing it for the worser of mankind. Good luck to all of us. Shalom.